order and do the roll call. Okay. The regular meeting of the Transgender Equity Council will now begin. Good evening, my name is Track and I am the staffer for the Transgender Equity Council. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota statutes section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. The city will be recording and posting this meeting to the city's website and YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. Board meetings are public and subject to the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. I will now call this meeting to order and call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum. So I know folks are here, but I am still going to call the roll, and if you can just unmute your mic and say that you are here. Kenzie Weller.
Here.
Hunter Williams.
Here.
Nico Cruz.
Here.
Billy Couric.
Here.
Ray Lockman.
Here.
Galen Mitchell.
Here.
Melissa Berner.
Here.
May Brooks.
Here.
And Emma, Casey, Ash, Becca, Camilla, and Destiny are not here today, but we have 8 members, which is a quorum. And with that, we will proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access at the city's Legislative Information Management System, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. And Hunter, I'm going to pass it to you to adopt the agenda, but the one change we talked about right before you got on was just moving Tammy's presentation up to the beginning. So I would recommend that we adopt the agenda with the presentation moved up to the beginning above the other discussion items. And with that, I'll pass it to you and see if anyone else has any edits they want to make to the agenda.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. This is Hunter again. I wonder if anyone wants to move the agenda as Track stated it, or if anyone has any other suggestions to amend it. If not, I suggest a motion to accept the agenda and minutes.
May Brooks, so moved.
Ray Lockman, second.
Right.
Awesome, and I'm going to call roll again on that. Kenzie?
Here, yes.
Hunter?
Yes.
Nico?
Yes.
Billy?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Melissa?
Yes.
May?
Yes.
And Galen?
Yes.
Wonderful. There are 8 in favor. The remaining are absent. The motion carries and the agenda and minutes are adopted. And Hunter, I believe you were going to introduce Tammy for her presentation.
Yes. This is Hunter speaking again. I'm going to introduce Tammy Dickinson from Minneapolis Employment and Training. Tammy works on how to expand trans inclusion into their grants. And so welcome, Tammy. Oh, and actually, before we get going, if people have any questions, let's just keep track of those, maybe write them down, or you can put them in the chat if you prefer and hold them till the end just to make sure that we have time. And again, thank you for coming, Tammy, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Hunter, and everyone here on the council. Whoops, I have a squeaky chair and I apologize. But so what I wanted to do today, is there the presentation that you can see the slides, or otherwise I can share that, or maybe I can't, I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say if you can screen share, that would be great. Or if not, I can pull it up. It will just take me minute because my computer does not like me.
Okay, well, it doesn't, I mean, it's very, very basic information. So I'll talk through it, and then if you have a chance to pull it up, that's great. Otherwise, I can pull it up a little bit later. But essentially,
This is Hunta. I'll just add, if we can't get it pulled up, it's an option as well just to email it to the group.
And it is also attached in the agenda, but I do have it now, and I'm going to screen share. And then interpreters and Hunta let us know when you let us know that you've still got each other pinned in a way that works.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay.
I can see it. Thank you.
Great. Well, I'll get started. Basically, I wanted to do two things today. One is just kind of give a broad overview of what Minneapolis Employment Training does through the city of Minneapolis in very, very broad brushstrokes. And then two, I'm really looking for input from your council about what kind of services, programming do you see out in community that's working well? Do you see any folks in employment, or I'm sorry, that are accessing employment and training programs, and then kind of gaps and in services and outreach. So, but first I'll start with what we do. And we have two basic breakdowns in our services. One is we serve adults, and we provide career services and training, particularly for low-income Minneapolis residents, 18 plus. So those fall in our adult services realm for the most part, but we do have some crossover. And we deliver services through a network of 17 community-based organizations, some of whom you'll be very familiar with, but like Clues, Avivo, Eastside Neighborhood Services, Project for Pride and Living, so Emerge, kind of all the usual suspects that you might know, and then some smaller organizations like CAPI and Search. And I'm happy to provide a listing of the organizations if that would be helpful, but I didn't want to overwhelm the slide either. And so what we do with adult services is we contract with those organizations to be front facing. So they're in community, people can walk in their doors, maybe not during COVID, but typically they can, and access services to either get training, get connected with education, or get connected with a job. And so in the time of COVID, we've had to transition our services and work differently like everyone. And so a lot of our organizations have transitioned to online trainings, online info sessions, virtual services, and so on. And they've been really creative in how they do that. So some are working with people via text for folks that don't have access to computers or internet. And some are doing Zoom and other kinds of platforms like we're using to have some face-to-face contact with folks. So broadly, then, our goal with our adult program is to get people connected to work, and there might be an intermediate step of providing training that would skill them up to get into a specific job to do that. The second set of services are aimed at youth and young adults, and as I mentioned, there is crossover. So we start with age 14 in our youth services, and we go through, it says 24 here, but oftentimes we can go as up to like age 30. Those boundaries and parameters have been shifting over time as society and community recognizes that oftentimes people are not, necessarily totally ready for the workforce or totally considered adults in some ways, well into their mid-20s and beyond. So we can do some mixing and matching if someone might be better suited for a young adult program that could offer a specific training that can't be accessed by in our adult programs. But I would say that we don't go the other direction. So we're typically not going to take a 30-year-old and put them in our young adult program or youth program, make them access services that way. And then we have drop-in services. So we have the Cedar Riverside Opportunity Center, we call it CROC, right in the heart of Cedar Riverside neighborhood. And they can that organization is staffed by Emerge and then a number of other organizations like Hennepin County Libraries that come in and out and provide drop-in services as well. Minneapolis College is a presence there as well. And then we have a career force North and South Minneapolis locations. North is up on Broadway, West Broadway, and South is on Lake in Chicago, roughly. So that's our presence in community. And I think a lot of times people don't associate the city of Minneapolis with providing those services because we don't necessarily put our face on the programming that's offered by PPL, for example, but we're the background funder of that. So just to know that that exists. If you want to flip to the next slide, this is where I'd like to hear a little bit more about from you. So as I mentioned in the beginning, are there programs that you know of right now that are serving the LGBTQ population well? I'd love to hear about that. And then are there gaps in services that you'd really like to see us work towards? So I'll tell you from the outset here that I've worked on carving out some specific funding to be able to address gaps and needs for the LGBTQ population so that we can really specifically create something if there is something that we can fit, gap fill or be creative with. So this isn't just talking. I think we really do have some resources to put behind this, and I want to make sure that we do it in such a way that we've asked the people that can help guide the programming, and then my job and my passion is actually designing and implementing programs that serve community and then evaluating those throughout. So I threw a lot of questions at you, but maybe where we could start is two things. Do you have any questions about the services we offer? And then second, maybe you could talk to me about what programs you know of that are offering good services already and that we could maybe pattern after. I'm gonna be taking some notes here, so have at it.
This is Hunta. Is it okay if I go ahead?
Yeah.
So first of all, I know I'm just gonna start by saying the gaps. I know trans folks experience a lot of gaps just in general. And on top of that, and Black folks specifically, there's just not a lot of support out there for Black trans folks. I know we do have deaf, for deafblind and hard of hearing LGBT folks, there's also some gaps. And I know that Indigenous folks are falling through those gaps as well. And so I think we can, bridge some gaps by just making sure that we are serving those folks. I mean, I am a Black, deaf, trans person, and I do personally just experience gaps in all kinds of things. So I won't go on. I'm sure other people have more things to say, but I'll just put that out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Is it okay if I ask questions back just to get at a little bit more of the experience? Because it'd be interesting. I'd be
asking Hunta or just the group in general.
Hunta, just because of the specific experiences there. If you could share more about when you've tried to access services and not gotten what you needed, that would be good to know, or maybe your experiences in like specifically with an employment program or something like that. Anything would be helpful for me.
This is Hunta, sure. So as far as getting employment, for example, just after I'm hired, orientation. If there's some kind of a sensitivity training for trans folks, for all my colleagues in the past, you know, I transitioned at work and, you know, had a name change, and people wanted me to prove things with my birth certificate and stuff. And they asked me all kinds of uncomfortable questions. And then also I experienced a barrier where people don't provide interpreters, and people don't provide interpreters that are aware about trans stuff. Sorry, my dog's getting in my screen right now. Yeah, and just in employment in general, I think that our community experiences a lot of discrimination. I am a teacher and I experience discrimination with that. People are confused about gender identity and stuff. Yeah, so that's my experience. I think, you know, it's important to have support, and have, like I said, the sensitivity trainings to make sure that I'm in a safe place that I can come out at work. So it's important to have trainings so that there's just understanding. And again, like I said, not having access to interpreters at different parts of my job really is limiting.
Mhm.
And, you know, we don't have enough Black interpreters either. LGBT, it was just, yeah, I could go on.
Thank you. That's super helpful. And because it's actually not a place where I would have seen a gap, right? The gap I'm thinking is, oh, we're not finding the people that want to get access to employment, or we're not providing a training or an opportunity that matches the interest or need. But what I didn't think about is it may not be a situation where there's difficulty in finding a job. It may be once you're employed, there's difficulty in actually, you know, how you show up in that job and how you're supported in that work.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and not only that, but, you know, just looking for a job. You know, for me, when I just tell I'm deaf as I'm looking for a job, all of a sudden it's like, oh, no, we're not looking to hire. Or, you know, they find out I'm deaf because there's, you know, I have a master's degree. I've got all kinds of things. I can, you know, get along well with people and interact, but sometimes I'm not given an opportunity because I'm deaf. And I've done a lot of work. Sorry, I'm struggling a little bit with my keeping my computer, but I've done a lot of work, and it's just, you know, people don't know how to interact with me. All of a sudden when they see a deaf person, like, oh geez, I don't even want to think about what I would have to do for that, you know?
Right.
And I know that behind, you know, that I can tell and just see in their face, they're just totally shocked and they don't know how to react to me. And then, you know, being trans on top of it and Black, it's just, the list goes on.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a thought on what kind of gaps you see in employment support, or, you know, pre or post?
Yeah, this is Kenzie. I've been in the social services realm for pretty much since I left school, and I have definitely noticed that the queer folks that I have worked with are hesitant to access any services unless it is kind of explicitly stated that, you know, we are LGBTQ friendly. This is a safe space. I think it's hard for the young people that I've worked with to kind of just assume that places are going to be accepting of who they are. So that explicit messaging is very helpful. I also think that if we could incorporate, you know, how can we coach young adults, you know, how can you even like submit a resume if like it, is my dead name supposed to be on my resume, or can I put my actual name on the resume? So just like coaching on how to navigate that. And I think if there could also be explicit like partnering with Minneapolis businesses that, that have proven to be queer friendly, then these employment agencies can, refer to, these various other places. Yeah, I think that's all I have for now.
Well, that's good. That's a lot. No, and that brings to mind something I would love to ask of your council, and I don't want to give folks work, but is there a way that you guys could come up? I'm sorry, my dog is so loud in the background. Sorry. Anyway, could come up with a list of businesses or organizations that you feel are friendly, are offering services that are really clearly stated, LGBTQ friendly, are and actually are doing it, not just saying it, but doing it, because we can then start to attach ourselves more or do messaging through those organizations or contract with them to provide outreach or services. But I'm limited in what I know. So if there's the way to list, or is there a way for us to put a tag or a star or something that says this business is friendly? I don't know.
Yeah,
This is
I
Track. I
appreciate.
have a
Oh, sorry.
clarification question. Sorry, Ray, can I just clarify for the notes before you jump in?
Of course.
Are you looking for potential employers, Tammy, or are you looking for like organizations that reach queer people that could help advertise things, or both, or all of the above, or something else?
I would actually say all of the above, because one, if we can start to get a list of employers that are really open to, honestly open, that would be great, because we can start to direct young people from our trainings to those employers and drew that confidently, right? But then others, I would like to see, and the places that come to mind are like YouthLink and places that I know or I think are friendly. But I would love to have it kind of that extra support of knowing that your council also sees that, and then also giving me a list of those organizations that maybe aren't on my radar already. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is Ray. So I appreciate that, Tammy, because I was actually going to piggyback on Kenzie and say that saying they're queer friendly definitely isn't enough. So I'm relieved that you understand that, because there are a lot of places that say, like, we love diversity and they haven't done the work. So that's also to say that it's important to know what employers and organizations mean by diversity, because I think a lot of times that's code for like looking at anti-Black racism, which is incredibly essential, but just because they've done work or are doing work on that axis definitely doesn't mean that they've done work with transness. And so I think being a little more specific and careful about like what, we have a diverse workforce, or we do a lot of equity and diversity work, what that means for each organization. So just wanted to give a nod to that. Thank you.
Thanks. And Track, I want to be in Hunter. I want to be cautious about how much time I'm taking. So you need to give me the send the music off the stage kind of thing if I'm going too far. Thank you, Ray, and thank you, Kenzie.
This is Track. You're good for right now, and I can offer to start at least from like lists I've already had to half make for other things, pulling together what I have for you, Tammy. And I would ask that other folks on the TEC, and I can send this ask out as well for the folks who couldn't make it tonight, if you have thoughts of employers or organizations we should be advertising through, please send that to me so I can add it to what I'm compiling.
Okay, great. I absolutely open to more input and feedback, but I also want to throw a couple other things out there. One, I can drop my information in the chat. So if there's anything that you didn't get a chance to talk about today and that you want to just send me a note or want to schedule a call, I'd love to talk to you and hear more about it. The other thing is as we start to develop programming, I want to have some sort of feedback loop and mechanism. So if anybody's interested in advising on the development so that we don't go astray, I would love to pick your brain or have you involved in that in some way. So please let me know that as well. And TRAC knows that we've got the city group as well that's kind of advising and making some recommendations about what we do. But I think that I want more than that. I want this group plus the city group because unfortunately I don't know what I don't know, and so if I don't ask the right people, we're gonna not create the right thing. So I'll put my.
This is Hunta speaking. And maybe before we continue, I did just want to add one other thing, another gap that I'm noticing. I think there's two other gaps that I'm aware of. As far as the LGBT community, thinking about that, of course, we need that support. But sometimes I think there are, one moment. So some people maybe they will have a particular view where they are being supportive, but they might support, for instance, the LGBT community, but they won't support the trans community. And so I think that's a specific gap too. So that's definitely a missing piece there where there isn't that support for the trans community specifically, and even within the queer community. And so I think that's one thing to keep in mind. That's very binary view things that people have as well. And so unfortunately, that's a gap. I think we do need more support of the trans community specifically. And then other thing I wanted to mention too is that there are so many excuses that are made. Often we see that happening. I think we need support programs that are, that actually have, for instance, even just legal services about people slandering names within the community and, outing people, talking about domestic violence, talking about all these kinds of things too. I think there can be, people become targeted in the community. And I think there's just not enough support in general. It's not always personal, but I think it's sometimes directed more specifically at the trans community. So I think we need some kind of support there as well. How do we prevent that from happening? The bullying that can kind of happen in the community. I think that it can be dangerous. Social media itself can become very dangerous for the trans community. And so how do we provide more support there as well? Because I think right now we're seeing more and more people are starting to, commit suicide. And I think that's something, and I think it's because of cyberbullying that we see that. I think we have to think about some of those things as well. And how do we support building that kind of community, support having legal protections too, especially when there is that kind of damage that's happening out in the community. I mean, unfortunately, we've lost so many people and there's not been any kind of accountability either. So I think that's something that we need to think about. Right now, I'm really going through some things right now myself, and it's been so frustrating having all these different barriers that I'm experiencing. And to be honest with you, I don't want other people to have to experience what I'm experiencing. Fuck that. So we need help for sure.
Thank you. And thank you for being so honest and open. That's not always easy to do, I know. Let me throw you one idea that I had, and it could be crazy. So, and I usually have a lot of crazy ideas. So if you think it's just not at all an option, let me know. If you think it's something that maybe is something we could look at. What I was hoping to do is possibly have a an employment program that was, developed by us, but that would hire trans people to actually be the advocates and trainers that would then go out to businesses and educate and advocate to the business, to the community organizations, provide trainings for organizations that are working with trans and LGBTQ. Or, I'm sorry, I know it's within it, but I can never do that right. So, but working with LGBTQ population at their organizations, because I think what happens is when someone like me would walk into PPL and say, you really need to do a better job working with the trans community, and here's some ideas about how you could do that, they'll listen to me, they'll hear me, but it has has limited impact. And I also don't have that experience to bring to it. So if we could create a program where we can hire people that would actually do that work and be the experts, that's what I'd like to see, rather than hiring a trainer to go in and do that work. So anyways, thoughts on that?
This is right. That would be great. That'd be awesome.
Okay.
Right off the bat, I love it. I think that would be super important, because then you have support on both sides, the employment seeker and the employer. You have an advocate there to kind of address any gaps in knowledge that the employer may have. I think that would be really incredible. And also, just while I have the floor, this is completely off topic, but I think it is also super helpful for any kind of employment organization to be able to do like background checks, so folks are able to see what pops up on their record. Right now I work with a lot of like folks on probation, and like finding a place that can run a background check for free is very hard. So just throwing that out there as well.
Kenzie, I'll reach back to you with some resources, because I do have some information about that I could share.
That'd be great.
Okay. All right. So I think I've probably hit my max, unless folks have any other thing they want to share. I don't want to not give anybody the opportunity to share an idea.
This is Billy. I just want to say that I fully support your crazy idea. And also, I will say that as a queer identified person, I've had the privilege of working jobs that have a larger HR department. And I'm in a union now. And I would say as a queer person, I give preference to jobs that kind of have that support. And like I said, I've been privileged to work jobs like that. But there are HR departments that aren't well trained, and that can be frustrating as well. So having a trainer go in, as Kenzie was stating, and kind of having support on both ends, employer, employee, is super important. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So if anybody had an idea, didn't want to share it with the group, but wants to reach out to me directly, I am at your service. Would love to talk to any and all of you, or something you think of that you didn't think of right now. Otherwise, I will step back and let you guys go on with your meeting. And I appreciate all of your time tonight.
Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, this is track. I will be compiling that document as promised. So please send me that. And if you have any interest in advising more on the programming like Tammy talked about, please either put your name in the chat or reach out to me or Tammy later to let us know as well. Does anyone have anything else they want to just say about any of that right now before we jump back up to what would have been first in the agenda?
What I was going to say, this is May, what I was going to say to her was, and I forgot who said it, Billy. The great thing about really large companies that have lots of money and many more resources as opposed to a really smaller company. Um, like for instance, I know Johnson and Johnson probably 10 years ago actually had a person, their whole job was to coach someone through the whole process. And they had a person who navigated everything from um, the medical benefits side to it, to how to walk through the different parameters, be it the legal name change or how to ready the department um, for the person who was transitioning. I just can't remember the name of the department. So what I was going to suggest to the woman who was here, Emmy, was that that's something, if she wanted to look into it and get some background, that might be a good place to start.
Awesome. I'm still here, so I'm going to step back in a minute, but I wanted to hear what you were saying. So
Oh,
now I'll quit being here.
yeah, and the only thing I can think of is, quite frankly, the person who would actually have the contact information would be Steve Hummerich at the Forum for Workplace Inclusion, because they did an entire workshop on it.
Oh, cool. Okay, I'll look that up.
Okay.
Thanks, May.
You're very welcome.
This is Track. Thank you all so much. I know I was supposed to lead the next item on the agenda, so I will jump up to that, which was just giving some updates on where the TEC's recommendations to City Council are at. And as always, I will also put this in the notes with links to like the actual ordinance language, etc., on the city's LIMS website. But in terms of your recommendations around housing, the only things that have changed are the city staff are drafting renter eviction protection ordinances, and we'll bring them forth for a public hearing and council vote sometime this month, attempting to get that passed before the end of the eviction moratorium, which we know is a constantly moving deadline, but the goal is to get that passed this month. It is modeled after eviction protections that have been passed in St. Paul and St. Louis Park, and is explicitly some of the ones that I know were called out in the TEC recommendations. So that is one piece of good news there. Does anyone have any questions on that before I move on to community safety? If not, in terms of things that were categorized under community safety, the bad news is, although the city did put support for the panic defense, the state level panic defense bill in our legislative agenda, the panic defense bill did not get a hearing at the state level and probably won't this late into the legislative session. So that is not happening this year, which is both unsurprising and really frustrating. Updates on other pieces of the community safety recommendations. The community drafted charter amendment to remove MPD from being a required city department. The petition signatures for that charter amendment have been brought to the clerk's office. The clerk's office has 10 days to confirm that it is people who are registered to vote, and then we'll start the process of moving it through the Charter Commission, which is the next step to get it on the ballot. So that piece is moving forward. Also, I'm being told I have bad network quality, so if I start cutting out, please let me know. And a number of different pieces of community safety work were funded in the 2020 budget. I'm linking to some of them in the notes, including a lot of different, like, how can staff look at how to get certain pieces of what the police are currently doing out of MPD. And so one piece that is newly moving forward is there is a staff direction, which is the technical term for council told these particular staff to do something by this deadline, and it is now officially their responsibility for staff in the Office of Performance and Innovation to start working with a bunch of other departments on a plan and timeline for what it would look like to create an unarmed traffic safety division that would do traffic safety enforcement instead of MPD. They are supposed to report back with the vision for that division and with the timeline to council by the end of June. I will obviously be keeping an eye out for that report back, and will update you all, and particularly the policy subcommittee, on it once we hear more. That is one of the more specific pieces out of what came out of the 2020 budget. Otherwise, a lot of the pieces were more broader, like these departments have to look at what can be moved or what can be done differently. But this is a specific piece that is now moving forward. Those are the updates I have around the community safety recommendations. Does anyone have questions on any of those? And if I'm getting either like too jargony or so high level that it doesn't make sense, please let me know. When I've been like swimming in some of these documents, it's hard to figure out how to summarize them in a way that's helpful for other people. If not, update on training. The request for proposals for a gender inclusivity trainer to train city staff has been released. There are 2 weeks until the deadline. It is due on May 21st. When I send out the minutes from this meeting, I'm going to send it out again. Please apply if you're interested. Please spread the word to anyone you know who might want to be the city's next gender inclusivity trainer. Nico and Emma are both serving on the review committee, along with myself, Destiny, and DAN from HR. And Destiny was recently promoted and is kind of has 3 roles at once right now. Once she is fully transferred into her new position, we will start moving again on the HR trans equity survey around how can the city better support trans employees. But that is currently waiting essentially on Destiny to not have 3 jobs at once, is the update on where that is at. Does anyone have any questions on either of those? And the last thing I have is about bathrooms, which is just that I have followed up with a couple folks around how can we incentivize gender neutral bathroom construction in buildings that receive permits from the city for construction. I've been told that staff in community planning and economic development are still meeting about that, and that this is like cross-division work, and so they have to figure out what it will look like. I'm going to keep following up. I will let you know as I hear more, but I say that just to say that this is theoretically in process, just not in a way that I have any more information about. That is what I've got on updates on your recommendations. Does anyone have any questions on any of that overall?
Hunter here. I do have a question. I guess I'm going to be a little bit blunt about the bathroom discussion. You're saying it's in process. I think I'm not understanding. Is it like taking a long time, or geez, I feel like this has been a conversation we've been having for 6 years or something. So I don't know. Is there any other kind of a reason we have about why it's all taking so long, or what does this mean in process?
This is track. No, that's a good question. I will say transparently, I think I got clearer on how to best push and support your recommendations as the TEC staffer this year than I had been in the past. And I have followed up a lot more directly with council members and council offices. Whereas in the past, you all had just kind of presented your recommendations and we'd waited to see what stuck, essentially. Because I have been following up a lot with council offices, they have then been following up regularly with community planning and economic development, which is what is getting this moving. I think part of the barrier is that people are just actually moving on this for kind of the first time, even though, as you said, this has been an ask for many, many years. And so they're figuring out that it's something that doesn't work within the city processes, how they're currently set up, and they're trying to figure out what we'd have to do or how we'd have to partner to make it happen. But you're right that it's been a long-term ask, and part of this is about folks being more receptive and us having followed up in different ways and pushed it in different ways. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Does anyone have any other questions? If not, Kenzie, I think you've got the next piece of the agenda, so I will pass it to you.
Yes. Updates from the Office of Violence Prevention. The update is that there is no update. So I guess that concludes that. And for our subcommittees, I volunteered to report back on policy. So I'm going to get my little notes here and just jump in. So the 26th, Track gave us some updates from Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's LGBTQ roundtable. So some highlights from that is seeing what it would look like to ban conversion therapy in the entire state of Minnesota. And if you're like me, you might be thinking, didn't we do that? Well, it was just in the city of Minneapolis. So obviously still a lot more ground to cover. And hopefully we will see the ban popping up in other cities. And yeah, eventually it'll hit the state level. And Track kind of touched on this, the transforming community safety. And Jay, they asked, not even in St. Paul. Somebody else might know. I don't think so. I just heard about Minneapolis. Track says maybe. Oh, nice. So yes, transforming community safety. We talked a little bit about the unarmed traffic safety division and what that would look like, and whether the TEC would like to chat with Councilmember Cunningham regarding this project. Track, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's kind of leading that project. Excellent. And yeah, I brought up in our meeting that I don't necessarily take issue with the unarmed traffic safety division, but it does feel very base level, like the city's trying to do something, but for me, in my gut, it's like not the right something. So yeah, I'm wondering if anybody else has any interest in getting something together so we can talk to Councilmember Cunningham about this. I mean, Hunta was blunt. I'll be blunt as well. It like truly seems like the bare minimum, like unarming traffic cops. Seems very silly. So yeah, guess I'd like to open that up for discussion if anybody wants to help out with that, because I definitely have some things to say. And then just today, actually, there was
that feeling that it does feel like the bare minimum. So I just want to give you support on that.
Yes, so, and then sex work, decrim, there's actually a meeting today. Yeah, still working to remove the current loitering ordinance. Yeah, and there's a decrim toolkit that kind of outlines the actions. Yeah, I'm sure somebody can send that resource out if anyone's interested. Beautiful, beautiful. And they have an event coming up, but I'm sure we'll get updates as that's planned more. And I think that's it. I mean, we had a pretty tiny policy subcommittee meeting, so I couldn't have missed much. But May, if you have anything to add that I did not get to, feel free. Otherwise, we can kick it to training subcommittee.
Training subcommittee it is then.
Yeah, and this is track, because we had to move this TEC meeting a week earlier to avoid holidays. There hasn't actually been a training meeting since the last TEC meeting. Training is meeting tomorrow. I should have just not put it on the agenda at all, as opposed to putting it on the agenda and striking it. I wasn't fully thinking, but I think policy is all we have updates on right now, and we'll just have a couple rounds of updates from training at the next TEC meeting.
Beautiful.
In that case, I think it's me, this is Track, to talk about trans issues work group updates. So as many of you know, the trans issues work group is the internal city group made up mostly of employees that works on some of the more internal trans equity issues. The division doesn't even really end up being internal, external, but it just means we've got more folks doing this work, which is great, even if the division of labor is unclear. And so we've been working on drafting trans equity requirements that we would attach to city grants with shelters and also with other social service providers. We have a more final draft of the policies. I can send them back out if anyone is curious. And where we're looking in terms of next steps is we are meeting with procurement staff, so staff within finance, and staff in all of the relevant departments in the city and county to try to institutionalize a process of getting these policies into the contracts. So it's not just dependent on the person who's writing the contracts right now knows to attach them. And when that person leaves the city, it goes poof. I am meeting with some staff from procurement as well as Councilmember Fletcher's office. He's offered to support on some of the finance side of this next week, and I will keep you all posted. The other next steps are just finalizing the policies. We've sent them to a couple more folks for feedback, but are pretty close to being done. And then the last piece, and the piece that connects to some other pieces of this work, is staff in city departments that are managing these contracts, whether
Track, I think you're frozen.
to get. Oh no. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but I missed whatever you just said. Sorry.
Where did I cut out? No, don't apologize.
Literally the whole thing. Missed everything.
Okay. I'm going to start over. Please let me know if I freeze again. But so we have more final drafts of these policies. We will be meeting with procurement staff and staff in all the relevant departments in the city and county to institutionalize a process of getting these policies into the contracts. So it's not just dependent on the person who normally writes these contracts knows to put it in there, and when they leave their job at the city, it all goes poof. We're going to finalize the policies, and then the other next step is getting the staff in the relevant city departments, so like the staff who manage our contracts with shelters, to get the city's gender inclusivity training so that by the time we roll these out with their contracts, they will feel comfortable providing some basic explanation and technical assistance to the providers they're working with. And when someone comes to them and says, I'm required to do this, what does it mean? Why is it important? They may refer that person at some point to my division. They may not end up going through the whole explanation with them, but they will be able to provide some level of support there, and will just know what's going on and feel comfortable with that. And that shouldn't be an issue to get that happen before we roll these out, because realistically, we're not going to have new contracts to put these in for close to another year at the soonest. Some contracts longer than that, because our contracts are often multi-year. But that is why we're working on institutionalizing this, so that it will still be able to go into place whenever there are new contracts. Yeah, I will stop there. That is the main update. And then the other thing that came out of that is Tammy saying, I'm really excited about this and want to do this with the employment providers, and want to do even more than that and actually provide more LGBTQ specific programming and pull aside funding for that. And you heard all of that from Tammy already. Does anyone have any questions, comments, suggestions about anything I just shared? Sweet. Is my audio working with video on now? Okay. Let me know if it stops again. In that case, the last thing is just an update from summit planning. Kenzie, Hunter, was I going to do this? I don't remember.
I think anybody that has been involved in summit planning can kind of report back on this one, but I was not able to make the last meeting.
This is Hunter. I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Interpreter trying to unmute and everything. Let's see here. I think that we've talked about providing that interpreter, where we talked about interpreting interpreter workshop. That was she's in April. Oh my gosh, time goes by fast. Lots of the interpreters that attended were not from Minnesota. It was, I think we'll continue to use our same interpreters that we've been using, Melissa, and then ask them to help, with scheduling. I think it's important to get certified deaf interpreters when possible, or just deaf interpreters that are willing and interested to mentor and observe, because if they're interested in learning more, then this is a good place to do it. So that's good news. However, we have to confirm the dates before we can move forward on anything. So I would make the recommendation to get a list going. About keynotes and who's available and when. I think, that's kind of the main thing we need to start talking about. Yeah, time's a clicking.
This is Track. Thank you for that. And we do have a proposal of dates now, so I will be able to actually put out a call for interpreters pretty soon. If you have certified deaf interpreters you want me connecting with, can you send me names, contact info, whatever you feel comfortable with, Hunter?
Absolutely. No problem. Would you just remind me tomorrow? Because, might not stick tonight. Great.
Totally.
Back at you.
Yeah. And I was going to give you all the update around dates and everything, so I can offer that and want to hear other updates, questions, suggestions you all have. Our plan right now is for the summit to be over 2 days, October 3rd and October 4th, which is a Sunday and a Monday, with some afternoon programming and some evening programming both days. Right now we've thrown out like a 3 to 5 p.m. session and a 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. session, but those are flexible and are really just best guesses of what might work. So I am open to any feedback on that.
And this is Hunter. Quick question. Are we talking face-to-face or virtual?
We are talking mostly virtual, some hybrid, still unclear. The governor just gave a reopening update today. The city is generally less open than the governor's updates. And I want to make sure we have anything that we have an in-person version of, we also have a virtual version of for people who do not feel safe in person or for whom it's not accessible. So some sort of mix, not fully clear what the mix is. And then the other updates I have for you.
This is the interpreter muted. Hunter was saying, I'm wondering if we'll use that same app that we did last year.
Last year we used Slack and then we were on Zoom. I don't know what you were referring to.
Slack, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Will we use that as well?
I want to hear if you think we should. For folks who weren't there, we basically used Slack as a place for people to connect, both to like get tech support and logistical information and also to connect socially since we weren't all in a room together. Curious to hear if it feels worth doing again.
Well, so the reason why I ask is because the interpreters used it as well, and it was really helpful for scheduling interpreters, and then the interpreters were in a group there as well. So then, they could chat and we could figure that out as well. So if we don't use Slack, I would just suggest that we use something else, or we could just even use Slack for the interpreters alone, because it was, I think that helped reduce the confusion. So it's totally up to you if we all want to use it as a group or just the interpreters can use it. So thanks.
Totally. This is Track. Thanks for that. Other updates I have for you all. We've talked the past few years about the summit's a lot bigger than it was when it started. Should it just be a giant once-a-year event, or should we break things up? And what we're looking at right now is having still a big summit every fall, a little bit less programming than last year, just because we were overambitious last year about what we could really do. But then also having a smaller, less formal event with just some of the programming each spring. Not a keynote, not a panel, not some of the most expensive pieces, but still offering some of the healing spaces, still offering some spaces for connection, to kind of meet the need we've heard for increased content and programming. So that is the plan for right now. And we started talking about themes in the last summit planning committee. People threw out ideas around civic engagement. People threw out ideas around trans joy. Someone suggested trying to put the two together. I would love to hear if folks have any thoughts on themes. And this is Track. I guess I'll also pose that question as how useful does it feel for you for the summit to be really pulled together around one tight theme versus having programming that's kind of on a bunch of different things? What would make the collection of programming feel best for you? One theme, and if so, what? Or things being all over the place or somewhere in between?
I think this is Kenzie, that I like the idea of a wide variety of things so that it can be a choose your own adventure. And I think both of the themes are very important. But how do you pick one? So let's do it all, is what I think.
And this is Hunta speaking, and I think the theme should be "Fuck yeah, Derek Chauvin is guilty." That's what I think the theme should be. You know, I think too. I think we need something bigger about something about change and more than just reform.
And this is Billy. To kind of piggyback off Hunta, I think that with the pandemic and the trial, like the city has just gone through such a tumultuous year that maybe the theme can just be like I personally like the theme of joy. I think it'd be hard to have an entire summit around joy. I think the joy will just be that we're getting to be in a group again and talk about important subjects, and hopefully everyone or most people are vaccinated by then. But I think it's a joyous event just because we can focus on community after having such a hard year. So that's just my initial thought to having a quote unquote theme. I don't think we maybe have to call it a theme. I think that's what's I guess confusing for me, because I like the thought of the choose your own adventure, like having a lot of things to explore or have open to people who maybe are not who that's not open to all the time. So maybe not calling it a theme, but just excited to be there.
This is track. The only other piece around the summit is I will say if anyone wants to be more involved with any of the pieces of coordination, either helping coordinate our volunteers, which Nico was a hero and did last year, helping coordinate some of our sponsors or anything else, please, as always, drop your name in the chat or let me know. Or if you know other folks you're connected to who would be interested in trying out one of those roles or getting more involved in any way. I believe that's all I have about summit updates, unless anyone has anything else. If not, I think that is all we have. And we would actually be wrapping up a little bit early. Does anyone have any more questions, thoughts on anything from earlier that they didn't get to throw in?
This is Billy again. Have we decided to reschedule the in-person TEC get together? I might have missed that.
I was just about to say the same thing. I don't think we've rescheduled, but it is still something that I want it was just an unfortunate time that, again, like yet another thing that, you know, our city had to go through at that time, and it's nicer, so I would love to reschedule.
This is Track. I'll send out a scheduling poll. Thank you for the reminder. Melissa, I thought I saw you jumping in too. Did you have something?
No, I just said I still have my snacks. Well, at least some of them. Some of them got eaten. But yeah, I would like to meet up physically again soon too.
Great. Thank you for getting snacks. Yes, I will do that. Does anyone have anything else? If not, we will wrap up early. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Sure, this is May. So move.
I second it. This is Hunter.
Awesome. Thank you all. I am